Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Bison Postgame Show, old school edition, brought to you by Gate City Bank with Jeff Kolpak and Mike McFeely. I'm Dom Izzo. We emphasize the old for all of us. North Dakota State looked like the Bison of old. 44 points today as they beat Indiana State 44-2. Cam Miller gets the start, Jeff, at quarterback for, we are told, an injured Quincy Patterson. Throws 3 touchdowns today, and he looked the part.
He looked the part. God, he played the part. He
Yeah, he
threw
did.
the part. He ran the part. He picked up the blitz part.
Yep.
I mean, he did a lot of parts today. Is he the starting guy?
Well,
I mean, can we
debate this for the next 7 days.
Well,
I'm sure that Entz will say on Monday. I'm sure he'll tell
Very
us.
forthcoming, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, this is a 180, Mike, of the guy we saw in Huntsville, Texas in May, of how he played.
Well, I mean, Cam showed flashes, I thought, at times last year, in the regular season. He didn't have to do much against Eastern Washington, just hand off 45 times.
Had a couple touchdown passes that game. But yeah.
Cam down in Huntsville was in over his head, didn't look comfortable at all, threw a couple of bad balls. And I'll still say that the play calling didn't do him any favors against Sam Houston either. But today he looked like a starting quarterback in the FCS, and he looked fantastic. And the Bison offense just seemed looser and just more options.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the couple of plays to the tight end to Josh Babbage and Noah Gindorf on the middle
had
of
a
the
catch
field.
since Labor Day.
Yes. And that looks like the old Bison offense, and Cam Miller looked like he was in control of the offense.
101 yards by the tight ends in the first quarter alone. So the people get the ball to the tight ends. Well, that happened early today.
Well, Matt Entz called him out, called out the running backs, offensive line, and they took that to heart. Obviously, Kobe Johnson we'll get to in a second, but it seemed like it worked.
Well, who didn't he call out?
Yeah,
He probably called out you, didn't he?
I wasn't there.
He called out me last Monday. I know that.
Well,
from my tweets.
Well, here's the thing about coaching, though, in this day and age is, you can't Vince Lombardi it all week, every week. You just can't approach kids like that anymore. So, but when you do give a message, it has some impact and some punch. And so I think Matt Entz in the last week cashed in his chips and said, you know what, this team is not playing up to what it could be, and I'm gonna call them out this week. You can't do it every week. You certainly can't, because our kids will tune you out. I mean, if you start yelling at them every day in practice, they'll tune you out. But I think they got the message, and that was pretty obvious in the first quarter.
Well, and the other thing is before this game, there were 4 grinder games, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, Matt Entz knew they had a tough go up at Grand Forks.
Northern Iowa.
Illinois State, they maybe thought it would be a little looser than it was, but that was a tough game. And Mo State was a tough game. So you got to kind of, like Jeff said, you have to kind of pick and choose when you do that. Mm-hmm. And Indiana State was probably a good opportunity just from, I think the coaches figured they could win this game comfortably. So why not call guys out and make them play hard and try to get ready for South Dakota State?
I didn't think this was about beating Indiana State. I think it was about beating South Dakota State on the road. I'm talking about this week. Or winning against JMU in the playoffs or reaching Frisco. I think this week in practice had really a little bit to do with Indiana State, but much more about the bigger picture
there.
Yeah.
Kobe Johnson fits into that. He had some big runs, but we hadn't seen anything, Mike, from the running backs like we saw here today. Explosive big plays.
But the explosive plays, and I'm going to go negative here just for 1 second. I still didn't see the consistent pound him into the turf type of running game. We saw explosive plays. They ran for nearly 300 yards. You can't argue with that. I'm not knocking a 97-yard record touchdown run, but you still don't see the 15-play pound between the tackles drives that we've seen in the past.
That's because they went 97 yards.
in 2 plays.
They didn't have an opportunity to pound when they go 97 yards, but you needed to see some of that. The running backs just haven't had a strong game in conference season. They had one today.
All right, so now it's on. Next week, the game in Brookings against South Dakota State. Obviously, that'll be the main talker for the next 7 days with the Jackrabbits, who came back and won convincingly at Youngstown State. This is a team, Jeff, that's been Jekyll and Hyde. They have played great on the road, but they've lost twice at home in Brookings.
Yeah, 2 big losses at home. Boy, this is going to be a huge game.
We thought the game 2 years ago was when game day was there.
Yeah, and NDSU's going in there. I think they're going to maybe use 2 quarterbacks in some way, shape, or form. I think they'll have Quincy ready for some practices. Just a total hunch. I think you have to start Cam Miller, don't you? The way he's played in the last 2 weeks.
Well, that's the question. I'll ask you, and then I'll answer.
But
I think you have to start Cam Miller, but I agree with Jeff. I think Quincy Patterson, they'll have some running packages in there for him, and he can still throw the ball. Quincy Patterson, again, folks, with 7-0 as a starting quarterback, and other than the second half against Illinois State and the Missouri State game, he was okay
Yep.
during stretches. He did nothing wrong. The offense just was never loosened
It
up
seemed
like
tight.
it was with. Yes,
Right.
yes.
Everything seemed tight. Everything
Yes.
seemed hard
Yes.
for them
Yep.
offensively.
So I think you have to start Cam Miller and Brookings, have Quincy. You're still going to need Quincy.
Yep.
You know, in some way, shape, or form, and you got to win this game for NDSU. So throw the kitchen sink.
I'll
at
go
him.
3 for 3. I think you have to start Miller as well down in Brookings. South Dakota State has just been a really interesting season. They're banged up. They're getting some guys back, and obviously this is their Super Bowl they have circled for a long time to get the Bison there.
I don't care how many guys they got hurt. I don't care what they've looked like before. They will have everything ready for NDSU, and NDSU will have everything ready for South Dakota State, because for the Bison, this could be a shot at a number 1 seed, and for sure a number 1 or 2 seed if they can run the table. And so this is everything for NDSU.
And flip it for the Jackrabbits, Jeff. If they lose, they'll have 3 losses, and they very well could play NDSU again in the playoffs early on.
In maybe quarterfinals, if you're looking.
I don't even think maybe earlier, maybe second round.
Second
Even
round.
then, again, if they've lost 3 times, the Jacks are playing on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and 3 losses. But there's going to be a lot of 3-loss teams, Dom. I mean, look at the shape, the way it's shaping up now across the CAA, the Big Sky. There's just a handful of teams now with 1 or 2 losses.
You know what we need to do? Let's expand the playoff field
That's a good idea.
to 128 teams so everybody gets in.
I'll say this: Mo State saved its bacon today against UND in a crazy game that now they look like they're in good position to make it into the FCS playoffs. Obviously, Northern Iowa and SIU are playing as we're taping this. SDSU, you figure, is in. After that last spot there is going to be really contentious to see who's going to get it. Between Northern Iowa is in the mix as well. South Dakota played its way out with a loss last week.
Well, and I mean, UND, they
had
win
a
this
chance.
game today, they would have been in it. They would have probably been able to get down to the last game of the season in Brookings for a playoff spot. And I still would have argued that at 6-5, they still could have gotten consideration. But
quality losses there.
I don't know. I don't know. It's what we talk about every year. Now that it's the fall season, we're down to 4 or 5 teams that can win a national
pretty
championship.
familiar names.
I was going to say the cream has risen to the top there at the very top. James Madison, Sam Houston, NDSU, Eastern Washington. Montana barely won today, so you're not sure about where the Grizz are at right now.
We don't know where Montana State is in the big picture.
Heck, Sacramento State might be the Big Sky champion when we get to this in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm not denying that, but good luck.
Look at their schedule.
I know. Well, they were an 8 seed a couple years ago and got dumped in their first game by Austin Peay. So lot to go, but North Dakota State in prime form here at 8-0 and set for the marker game in Brookings next week. For Mike McFeely and Jeff Kolpak, I'm Dom Izzo. That's the Bison postgame show brought to you by Gate City Bank.